Good morning. I'm Jim Zogby, and I'm president of the Arab American Institute. Zogby Analytics conducted a survey for us during the last month on the attitudes of Americans towards Arabs and Muslims. We've been conducting polls of this sort for the last 5 years, and in the current release, what is a concern to us is the fact that the negatives towards Arabs and Muslims continue to rise, and favorable attitudes decline. We're at the lowest point now that we've been since we began the polling. These numbers pretty much match the overall attitudes found in a recent Pew survey. A couple of observations I'd make about the numbers. The first is that it is not simply a question of who's up, who's down. It's a question of the impact of the numbers on the public's tolerance for certain behaviors. For example, with 42% of the public saying that profiling of Arabs and Muslims is acceptable, becomes obviously a concern, because tolerance for profiling in that form means that the rights of my community are at risk, and that the ability we have to mobilize an outraged public is therefore limited. At the same time, a very worrisome number is the percentage of those who say that if an Arab American or an American Muslim received an important government post, would they be able to do the job, or would their ability to function be impeded by their ethnicity or religion? We asked the question separately about each community. And in both cases, a significant number said that they felt that Arab Americans and American Muslims could not do the job. And of course, for those of us who are concerned about this, and because our institute is focused as an empowerment project to bring Arab Americans into government, this is obviously a concern. One final observation I make, and that is many have commented on the CNN Gallup poll that came out last week, showing that public attitudes on the Arab-Israeli conflict have begun to move as a result of this recent Israeli action in Gaza. 42% saying the Israelis were justified, 39% saying they were unjustified. What's interesting about that is that when they parsed out the numbers and looked at the demographic split and the racial split between non-whites and whites, you saw almost a mirror reflection of each other, with younger people 2 to 1 being opposed to what Israel was doing, and the other way 2 to 1 among older Americans saying the Israelis were justified. The same attitudes bear out in the poll we've done here, meaning there's not only a domestic component to this attitudinal split, there's also a foreign policy component. By a 2 to 1 margin, young people are supportive of, or favorable towards Arabs and Muslims, older people less so. Whites less favorable, non-whites favorable. For those who might diminish those results or dismiss those results, the non-white component is about 30% of the American public, a little more than 30% of the American public, so it's not an insignificant group. Interesting too that non-whites know more Arabs, know more Muslims. Those who know more Arabs and know more Muslims have significantly more favorable attitudes towards the two communities, and would be much more inclined to feel that an Arab American or an American Muslim in a government post could do their job. So those are the findings. Bottom line: more negative attitudes, a generational divide, an impact in the attitudes towards tolerance for behaviors that compromise the rights and empowerment of people of Arab descent. And as I said, matching the CNN Gallup poll, a corollary foreign policy impact of the numbers as well. And just final note, in the past, when we first started doing this polling, we used to comment that there was a partisan divide. What's very clear is that the partisan divide only masks a generational and racial divide. And that it's really the generational racial component here that's of interest. But I'll turn it over to Matt to see if he has any additional. Matt Duss, Foundation for Middle East Peace.
As of Friday.
As of Friday. Formerly with the Center for American Progress, is with us to comment on the results. Matt?
Thanks, Jim, and thanks everyone. I look at this survey, very helpful as usual, but a few takeaways for me. I think that one of the key points that Jim made is the divide between people who know more Muslims. I think this gets at how we're going to eventually solve this problem, and I would just say it's a problem that has been solved multiple times in Americans' past. As we've accommodated or assimilated, or whatever term you would like to use, new groups, not to say that Muslims are new in America or Arabs are new in America, they've been here since before America was founded, but groups that start to participate in American culture and society and politics in a higher profile way. America sort of goes through these growing pains. The most obvious example I would bring up here is John F. Kennedy as president and suspicions about him. Would he be loyal to the Pope? Would he be serving America? We understand that's a stupid question now. And hopefully sooner rather than later we will understand it's a stupid question about Muslims and Arabs. Unfortunately, having studied the issue of Islamophobia and American attitudes towards Arabs and Muslims over the past several years, for a part of the American electorate, demonizing Muslims and Arabs is still a political winner. There's just no getting around that. I think we've seen some important moments of pushback, particularly from conservative and Republican leaders. I'm thinking of the New Jersey Governor Chris Christie's defense, very fulsome defense of his friend and court nominee Sohail Mohammed against charges that he would be loyal to Sharia rather than to the laws of the state of New Jersey in the United States. I'm thinking of Governor Mitt Romney when the question of Sharia and this nefarious Muslim influence was put to him during a primary debate in 2011. He, I think, very admirably slapped down the question. As a member of a religious minority himself, I think we can locate some of the source of what he was saying there, and I think that's important. So as we move forward, I'd say one of the things that we would need to see is more cues like that from American political leaders. Also just the higher visibility of Arab and Muslim political leaders, business leaders, not only going about their work, but also identifying with their communities. Not to say that anybody should be forced to carry a particular flag, but just as these people become more present in American society, I would say it would only help the normalization. And finally, just a point about the news media. I think it's too easy to simply say that the news media plays along with suspicions and kind of fear-mongering, but I think at the basic level, the problem here is the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads, and a lot of Americans only experience, as Jim pointed out, many Americans still do not know Arabs and Muslims in their daily lives, and thus their only experience with Arab societies, Muslim societies, is what they see on the news, and that's often very violent and very negative. So it presents us with a tough problem.
Yeah, and I think that the problem goes to the deep culture. It's not just a question of the current period in which we live, but there has been over the years this objectification of Arabs and this humanization of others. Just reading in the last couple of months since the outbreak now of conflict in Gaza, but then also following on the heels of Syria and Iraq, etc. You get the kind of strange articles like from the Economist, a special issue front cover, what's wrong with the Arabs, and there's so much more violent, so much more angry, so much more turbulent, etc. Coming from a British magazine that in the last century probably killed more people than the Arabs have people to be killed. And I saw the movie Gandhi the other day. It was being re-aired. The brutality of the British in India, the brutality of the British in South Africa, the brutality of the British in West Africa, and in Ireland, right next door. A third of the population died of starvation under their watch, and the other third left. and the violence continued for another century. I mean, we forget our own history here in the West. As
Yesterday was the 100th anniversary of the start of World War I. It might be worth noting that it's a pretty violent era.
With hundreds of thousands, millions killed in that war and in World War II, and yet the Arabs are more violent. And so that sense of how it is portrayed tends to dehumanize. And therefore, after a period of time of coverage of that sort, look, with all what's going on in Cairo today, it's still more violent to go to Miami than it is to go to Cairo. It's still more dangerous to go to Houston or to walk the streets at night in Atlanta than it is in Cairo. And yet the story plays out. Be afraid of these people, they're dark, they're dangerous, they're worrisome. And that then has a component back here in terms of how it filters into the public. So that if somebody knows an Arab or a Muslim, they say, well, wait, that story's not true. That's where the disconnect comes. In the polling data, when we say if you know one, you're more inclined to think differently about it. And unfortunately, we're not as well known. The media doesn't do as good a job of telling the story about who we are. And so we've got work to do. We've got a lot of work to do, and we need a lot more assistance, I think, from media and from institutions to round out the image of what has up till now been a stick figure, sort of a one-dimensional stick figure that is viewed as a threat. Any questions?
What would you say that excuse me, what would you say the media needs to do to kind of
Matt, you want to do that?
Just try to provide, to the extent that they can, because again, it's really not news to say, that Muslim Americans or Arab Americans woke up today and made breakfast and went to work and came home with absolutely no problems, as is, of course, the case with the overwhelming majority of people in these communities. That's not newsworthy. I think the issue here, is context and just the way that these issues are framed when the coverage is on the Arab world or the Muslim world. This tendency to treat a lot of these problems as unique or intrinsic to these societies or the Muslim faith. And again, having covered this issue over the past years, I can see ways in which it's gotten better. And it's gotten better because of organizations like AAI and some of the work that other